affected my sinuses.
Oh, it affects everything. It does. It's a viral infection.
Yeah. Bitch.
Yeah.
When I'm laying down, it's fine.
But you turn your head a certain way.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Yeah. I almost fell just now over there. I'm a little screwy. Okay. Welcome to Another Fact. It's a show with Dr. Harvey Clermont and me, Bob Abraham. I hope you get a lot of interesting facts out of this show. I get 2 emails to talk about. Naturally, I'm not going to release the names, but they were sent to me. I'm a huge fan of the show. I'm glad someone is taking a stand against the disgraceful finance committee. Think they should be ashamed of themselves. The new public school system is draining our town of funds. No kidding. Rightfully so, should be going to the police and fire departments. They protect us every day. I wonder what you think of this issue. Well, I think it's a good issue. I've been batting my brain out there for the last month about the police and the firemen. So you hit the pile, you hit the star right away. Here's another one. No, I don't even need that. I don't need that. That's another thing. Okay. I know you're sick and tired of me, and I am doing is making town officials aware of what's going on in town. Also, residents are aren't treated right, and respect and common sense to the residents should be outstanding. Different people must be in the meetings, and officials are made aware of what's going on. With the water is a sure problem. In fairness to the water department, they can't crawl around under the ground. In town, but more and more trouble issues be brought forward to the town residents. Common sense issues it takes to make real town issues on the truth prevails. Someday the town officials may rely on the residents to get the truth. I'll just read 2 pages, that's all. But why can't the schools make a statement on how much money they put away? No one ever says how much money they have in the bank. That's a disgrace. I'm sure the town manager gets his ear on of mainstream of what taking on boats, going out there with the town manager, making a show on cable that the TM also sees as real problems that are on themselves are full of town manager cares that the residents are here to stay. Besides, they want to screw up the town. They certainly have issues. They must act before certain things. I'm just trying to. This show is based on getting certain facts straightened out, and the public. You can call me every name you want. I really could care less. But if no one does it, you don't know what's going on. And I don't care what anybody says. I really don't. Well, I'll end my misery, and Dr. Harvey Clermont's got a lot on his shoulders.
Okay, very good. Yeah, today I'm not going to harp on anything outside of medicine. I'm sure that the selectmen will be happy about that.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about analgesic patches. And I don't know if a lot of people are aware that one of the recommendations now for pain relief is the use of these patches before you go and use an opioid for pain relief, which I think is a good thing because they have developed considerably over the years. Patches started way back in 1979. You remember that little scopolamine patch that you put in back of your ear that was for motion sickness, for example. In fact, you might even be able to use that type of thing right now, you know? But that was the very first patch that came out. Subsequently, they've developed other patches. And I'll tell you a little bit about the history of it as well. But you need to know, first of all, how do you make a patch? What the heck is it? You know, and what are the components of a patch? Well, there are several. First of all, I should have brought a couple of patches with me and we could pull them apart, you know, and show you. But it's basically, it's a medicated adhesive patch you place on the skin to deliver medication into the bloodstream for treatment. That's basically what it is. And so the thing is, in order to deliver that medication into the bloodstream, it has to pass through the skin. Now remember, the skin is lipophilic. The skin has some fat in it. It doesn't absorb other fatty things very well. So it has to be a water-soluble thing as a medication in order to get absorbed. So that's number one. So let's dissect that patch first of all, see what the layers are. What's in those things? Well, first of all, you have a liner. Well, the liner is basically the covering of the patch. In other words, you have to strip that liner off the patch, then the medication is in there, and you put that on. So that liner, of course the liner is totally neutral, it has nothing to do with the medication or the effect. Then you need a good adhesive. Now there are several adhesives that they tried out initially, they keep trying them out, but there are several adhesives that seem to work the best. And so these are the ones that they basically will use in their patches. There are three types of adhesives that are on the market. Number one, silicones. Silicones, they use a lot of silicones, as you know, in medicine anyway, as well as out in society, they use a lot of silicones. And it's made up of monomers and polymers, basically. And for example, it's made by Dow, you know, one of the big industries that make these things. So the silicones are probably the most commonly used. The other one too are acrylics. Acrylics can be used too as an adhesive. The only problem with those adhesives are they have a half-life to them. And so after the patch has been on for a certain amount of time, the adhesive begins to lose its effectiveness, and you may get a little bit of peeling at the edges. So depending on how long they want that patch to work, they'll use maybe a little different preparation for an adhesive. If it's only going to be on 12 hours, if it's going to be on a day, if it's going to be up to 3 days like those patches behind the ears, those are for 3 days. So use different adhesives, basically.
Didn't the patches start with cigarettes, trying to stop you from smoking cigarettes?
Right now, that's the most common use of the patch.
Yeah.
It's a nicotine patch. That's the most widely sold patch at the present time. And it seems to be effective for some people.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people,
Yeah,
not
right.
everybody, but
No.
nothing works perfectly for
That's right,
everybody.
that's right.
You know. So, what else do we have? Well, you need to have some kind of a matrix in which to put your medication. In other words, you can't just throw the medicine on under that adhesive, whatever. So you need to have a matrix. And so what they use is a matrix as a filler, basically. They use something that's very neutral that won't hurt the medication at all, won't affect it, won't affect the absorption of the medicine, won't affect it in any way, shape, or manner. And so you have a neutral matrix. Now you have your drug. Now the drug has to be water soluble in order to penetrate into the skin.
Right.
And so basically a lot of the patches have medications that work because they are water soluble. And we're going to go over all the medications that you can get now, including now CBD, medical marijuana. Yes, medical marijuana. What they do now is they emulsify the medical marijuana. They use an ultrasonic machine, and they beat the crap out of this compound until it is tiny, tiny little fragments, little particles.
Yeah.
But they're now in water, and they don't move. They're permanently suspended in this water. Now they're water soluble, basically. So now they can put them into the patch.
Yeah.
So that's the story of the drugs, and we're going to go over them. Now, some of the drugs have just a single membrane, just that the liner, the matrix, the medication, that's it, one layer. There's also multi-layered. The multi-layers you use when you want your patch to last for 2 to 3 days. So the first layer will absorb, then the second layer, and maybe even a third layer in some of them that go for 3 days. And so that's how they do it. They do it with this membrane. Now the membrane controls the release of the medicines at the different layers. And so you can put little reservoirs in at each level, and that membrane controls it. Now you also need a backing. That's the thing that you see on the back. So the backing part, all it has to do is to hold that stuff, not leak through and all. So that backing has to be insoluble type thing. You've got to have a good backing to hold it in. And most of them use some type of a nylon material and all. And then some of them will then add a permanent, a permeation enhancer. In other words, a medicine that will help to enhance that medication that's in the patch, help it to get into the body. Now, some of them use it, some of them don't.
Right.
So those are all of the things that you think about with the components of these patches. Now, nowadays, they're developing even new systems. There's a nice system I saw that hasn't come out yet on the market, but they have little tiny little micro needles, not enough to cause any pain or anything, but the little things that can just penetrate the skin a little bit. You put the patch on, you don't feel the little penetrations, but it helps to enhance that medication to get in.
Right. And plus, there's a lot of people can't take a pill, can't swallow a pill.
Exactly.
Yeah, that'd be perfect for them.
Perfect for them.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the patches now and what are the medications that are in there, first of all. Well, after that initial patch that I told you about, the very first one, which had for motion sickness, the scopolamine, after that, a couple of years later, they came out with a nitroglycerin patch, which I guess works pretty well because you get a nice constant level of nitroglycerin from the patch. And so, as opposed to if you put that under your tongue, it works quickly, works well, but some people will get an intense headache, some people get side effects from it. You minimize the side effects by giving a nice constant dose of the nitroglycerin. So that came out in 1981. After that, they began to develop some of the birth control with using a patch. So they have the birth control patches. They also, and in that patch, of course, they have estrogen and progesterone, which are the two components of the birth control pills. So they also use just the estrogen part at menopause. So they use it for menopause as well, Exelon. And that's still on the market, still used, not as commonly as other things. Now, the most common one that's used, I mentioned to Bob too, was the nicotine patch. He had asked about that. Again, that's the most commonly sold patch, most commonly used patch on the market today.
Right.
So, and nowadays, the biggest push now is for non-opioid pain control. That's the big deal now, the opioid control. And so everybody's pushing to get an ideal pain patch for people to use. So let's talk about the different medicines you can put into this patch now, so that to try to control pain, try to control it. Well, first of all, lidocaine, Novocaine. You know about Novocaine because if it's injected in you, it gets onto the little nerve endings and it calms them down and you don't feel pain in that area. Well, you can't go shooting lidocaine into people all the time, but you can give it through the patch. So they came out with the lidocaine patch, and they used about 5% lidocaine in it. You can now buy them, and that was by prescription, still by prescription, 5%. You can buy them over the counter now, 4% lidocaine. You don't need a prescription for it. You know, so the pharmaceutical houses are pretty smart. They know how to get around everything.
Sure they
you know,
do.
they're making money. Don't worry about that. Not a bad place to have your if you want to purchase some stocks and all. I would use some of the drug companies.
What water, the bottled water everybody's going through.
Oh.
Don't tell me they're not making $1 million.
They're making $1 million. Well, look at the number of billions of bottles they're putting
Yeah,
out all
yeah,
the time,
yeah,
polluting the environment, of course.
Yeah.
You know, and they could care less.
Yeah, yeah.
They're making their money.
yeah.
They could care less.
Yeah.
Jeez. So at any rate, how does lidocaine work? It binds to that cell that's firing away. We call that sprouting. In other words, it's irritated and it's firing away, causing pain. Well, that's where the lidocaine binds and it calms it down so you can get pain-free to a certain level. You know, it doesn't go all the way through the body, obviously, but to a certain level, you'll get good pain relief with it. I've had people with plantar fasciitis, I got people with back pain, I got people with neck pain, people with carpal tunnel pain. All those, it penetrates enough so that you can get some relief.
Wow.
So it is worthwhile. You put the patch on for 12 hours and then take it off for 12 hours. So you put it on when you need it. So if you're having a hell of a bad time sleeping, put it on in the evening. Get some sleep, you know. If it bothers you more during the day, put the patch on during the day. You can use several patches at once. In other words, it has a very high index. You can use it and several of them at once and not be toxic to you at all. Or you can cut them. If you have pain just in one little area, like with plantar fasciitis, you cut it to fit, put it on, 12 hours, you get some pain relief. So that's a good thing. So that's the thing about the lidocaine patch. It's good for myofascial pain. Okay. What else can they put into a patch? Well, they can use a thing called capsaicin. Now, there's some people who love hot peppers, you know, and that's where the capsaicin comes from, is hot peppers. But that capsaicin also will bind to the nerve endings and give you good anti-inflammatory relief. Now, it's only used with certain conditions. Like, for example, we use the capsaicin for shingles. Some people who have that neuropathy, that neuropathic pain from shingles, that's a tough thing. My mother had it for almost 2 years. She finally, when she died at 99, she had that pain 2 years prior. You know, it was just terrible. But the capsaicin patch seemed to help, so we used it. So the capsaicin is used. What is capsaicin? It's a resin that's in the hot chili peppers. That's where it's derived from. And you put it into either a cream or you put it into a patch because it is water soluble and you can interact with the receptors, especially with the severe inflammatory problems. So at any rate, that's the second thing. The third thing is methyl salicylate. Now you've heard that term salicylate before because that's what aspirin is. It's an acetyl salicylate. Well, methyl salicylate is also a good pain relieving thing as well. And so how does it work? Well, it works by dilating up the little blood vessels, and the blood vessels themselves give a little warmth to the area that calms down the nerves in that area. So methyl salicylate is a good patch medication. And it's used pretty commonly now. For example, you've heard probably of some of the ones you can buy over the counter like Salonpas, S-A-L-O-N-P-A-S, Salonpas. That is a combination of methyl salicylate and camphor. I'm sorry, and menthol. And so those two in combination seem to work pretty well. The Salonpas is the only over-the-counter patch that's approved by the FDA for pain relief. The only one so far. So at any rate, methyl salicylate, and because of the little bit of heat in there that it generates, it works. And so, I mentioned menthol because menthol is in that Salonpas patch, and also there are other patches that use that combination, different percentages of the two, methyl salicylate and menthol, right over the counter. Menthol produces a coolness effect. You know, like Biofreeze. Biofreeze is basically menthol.
Yeah.
And so some people get relief with the cold. It's a cold feeling. Doesn't really make you cold, but it's a cold feeling you get from the menthol. And so why you combine the hot and the cold depends on the percentage of which you put in. So some get good relief with the pure menthol patch. Some get good relief with the methyl salicylate part. Now the menthol has quite an odor to it, because now in cough drops they have menthol cough drops, and you can smell the menthol in it. So the menthol, any aroma, remember, is a terpene. It's a terpene, and there's a menthol flavored terpene that produces that menthol aroma in there. But what that also does is that also increases the blood flow, but it gives you that cold sensation. It's kind of weird that one drug dilates and gives you heat, and the other one dilates and gives you cold. But that's what they do, you know. So, you know, at any rate, both of them are very good. Both of them are good. Some patches will then introduce camphor. Camphor comes from wintergreen oil, for example.
Right.
So, and also you can get it with eucalyptus.
Yeah.
It actually comes from a wintergreen or peppermint plant. That's the origin of the camphor in the first place. So, at any rate, there are several groups of different effects that the medications have, and they kind of lumped them in a way. One of them increases the blood flow, like, for example, the methyl salicylate patches. Some of them have that cooling effect, like the menthol. Some of them will cause a vasodilation, really opens up all the blood vessels, causes just a little bit of swelling actually inside. It causes a little histamine-like effect. Some of them induce irritation, capsaicin and irritation. I want to tell you about one final type of patch, which is the Cbd patch. That's the latest one in the market, the Cbd patch. And that really, now that you can emulsify and put that CBD into the patch so it gets absorbed, well, now the Cbd patch is really taken off. That seems to be the one that people are using much more often now than some of the other patches. Especially now that we're allowed to use hemp. And you know, hemp came back on the market. It got legalized again in Massachusetts. It got legalized now in the United States. So now we can use hemp, and there are hemp farmers now. All they do is they produce this hemp. Well, now the biologists now got strongly involved, along with the chemists too. So they finally, the biologists have a great job now, so that they can either get into the chemical industry. For example, Monsanto, who had that, what was it, glyphosate, which is the chemical that they use as a pesticide. They recently had to pay $2 billion in fines because of the glyphosate, which is a carcinogen, you know. But the biologists and the chemists now can either go to a place like Monsanto, get a great job doing stuff with the genetic modifications, and I have a whole talk on genetic modification. You need to understand a little bit about it. People don't know much about that, you know, but it's a whole subject in itself. But this is where biologists are going. That's where they make their buck. Or now they're working with the CBD. So the hemp farmers, get back to to that hemp again, they've purified that CBD, and they can isolate it. They can take every other terpene, every other cannabinoid out of that, and it's pure CBD, 99% pure CBD. And they put that, emulsify it, put it into a patch. Yeah. Those patches seem to work pretty well. Now, why did I emphasize the 99% stuff?
Excuse me, we've only got 3 minutes.
Well, it's okay. There's one other kind of CBD patch, and that uses the whole CBD. In other words, there are people who think you have to have the other terpenes and cannabinoids with it in order for it to work at its peak.
Yeah.
So you got these two elements now, the purifiers and you got the total CBD people, both producing their patches now. They're both effective. They're both effective. Any drawbacks to it? Well, first of all, you can get skin irritation. That's mostly from the adhesive, the skin irritation part. And that's probably the most common reason why people can't use it, because it really gets irritated. First and second of all, another reason why they can't use it would be if they happen to have an allergy to any of those components, like I told you. You can have an allergy to the medicine, you can have an allergy to the adhesive, you can have an allergy to any of those components of the patch. And so that's a second reason why people can't use the patch.
We only have 2 minutes.
Oh, no problem.
That's understood.
No problem at
whatever.
all. No problem.
I don't want to see you get into a, and you got to stop it.
No, I'm almost done.
Oh,
I'm
all right,
almost done.
all right.
So at any rate, you know, basically, other things that people use would be like Biofreeze, which uses the menthol and the camphor, and Bengay. Bengay was one of the original. Remember Peter Payne? He was the little green monster that they used to cause the pain in the shoulders or whatever.
Yep.
You know, that little green monster, they have methyl salicylate in it, menthol and camphor. They have all three in that Bengay. And actually, I do recommend some Bengay to people at times.
Yeah.
It does work.
Works good sometimes.
It still
It's
works, you know, and the camphor and the menthol give it a good aroma.
Yeah.
You know, people, they love that stuff. So Bengay is still pretty good to use.
Yeah.
So at any rate, basically, that's all I have to say about the patches. Don't be afraid to use the CBD patch. If you have back pain, neck pain, wherever your chronic pain is, try it for a month. Try it. Get one kind first with the pure CBD. Get the one with the total CBD. See which one works better. Try one for a month, the other for a month. If neither of them work, don't use them. Don't buy any more. You know, just use Bengay, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, so that's basically what I have to say, Bob.
Okay. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, from listening to Dr. Clermont. As usual, he gives you the right side of the stamp, not the glue side. But he's very knowledgeable in what he does, and it's worth it, 100% worth it for listening to him. Maybe not listening to me, but listening to him is much better. He has a lot of stuff ongoing and a lot of stuff to be heard for a later date. Thank you very much for watching. Residents, know the facts. See you next time.